put those in the chat, and yep, Jordan will follow up with you on that. And up next, we have Laura with the Tallgrass Prairie Center, and she's going to be highlighting native prairie plants, specifically focusing on plant selection, which is a very important topic. So we'll go ahead and let Laura take it away.
Okay, I'm really happy to be talking with you this evening, and I'm actually live, so I won't be able to address your questions in the chat, but I hope we have some time after the presentation to do so. My contact information will also be shared at the end of this. So anyway, I'll get started. I'm Laura Walter. I'm the Plant Materials Program Manager at UNI's Tallgrass Prairie Center. And I'm really happy to be here tonight to introduce you to some of my favorite prairie plants for home gardens. I think this fits so nicely. Kudos to Josh for organizing things the way that he did, because it follows really well after the gardening initiative and the backyard wildlife habitat presentations. We're going to start at this presentation with a little background on tallgrass prairies, why they're important, and why you should have prairie plants at home too. Visitors to our state probably know us best as the corn state, and they would not be wrong. But one big reason why we're so good at growing crops is that we used to be the prairie state. Iowa lies in the heart of the tallgrass prairie region, and it's no accident that we have some of the best soils in the world. Deep-rooted, long-lived prairie plants held soil in place and built up its fertility. They helped rain and snow soak into the soil like a sponge. Their leaves, stems, and flowers fed wildlife, which in turn allowed human cultures to flourish. 19th century settlers found abundant forage and hay for domestic livestock and deep, rich soil to plow for planting crops. Within a few generations of settlement, nearly all Iowa prairie had been converted to cropland. And Jordan, you got your percentage right. Only small scattered remnants remain, except in the Luss Hills of far west Iowa. Thankfully, we do have these remnants to show us what we've lost, and they also provide us the seed to potentially bring it back. Planting prairie along roadsides, on farms and parks, and even your own garden helps return the benefits of prairie to our land and people. The Tallgrass Prairie Center on the west end of the UNI campus is dedicated to empowering people like you to restore resilient, diverse tallgrass prairie. We can't achieve this work on our own, and so we are very grateful to the numerous partners and funders who help us to do our work. The TPC has 4 main programs: research and restoration, plant materials, prairie on farms, and Iowa roadside management. I manage the plant materials program. We help to make diverse Iowa source native seed available for planting prairies. We start with small collections of seed from remnant prairies. We grow that seed into plants and we harvest their seed. Then native plant producers can use our seed to start larger production fields. They produce enough seed to plant thousands of acres per year. In the bottom right image, you can see a pallet full of bags of seed that will be used to plant prairie along county roads across Iowa. The yellow tag on each bag means that this seed can be traced back to Iowa remnant prairies. One thing we don't do at the TPC is sell seed to the public, but our website has a list of Iowa businesses who sell seed or planting services. Even if you don't have a lot of land, you can bring the benefits of prairie into your neighborhood. My own kids, 2 of whom are pictured here, grew up with prairie in our backyard, and they learned from experiences like raising that monarch butterfly that you can see on the butterfly milkweed in the picture. When given appropriate light and moisture levels, native plants are well adapted to local conditions and anything that Iowa throws at them, and they need little care. They provide habitat for songbirds and pollinators like this brown-belted bumblebee and help preserve our state's heritage and biodiversity. By the way, if you need a tongue twister, try saying brown-belted bumblebee several times quickly. So what is a native plant? It's one that occurs in wild places like prairies, wetlands, and woodlands without having been planted by colonizing people. Native plants are fundamental parts of the web of relationships among living things in our native ecosystems. So how can you learn which plants are native to our area? Websites like Iowa Prairie Plants and field guides like Wildflowers of the Tallgrass Prairie by Runkle and Rusa are key resources you can use. Watch out for the popular meadow in a can mixes from big box stores or websites. Many of the plants in these mixes are not native or long-lived and won't provide the same benefits as carefully chosen native plants, however pretty they may be. And there are so many wonderful native plants to choose from. I picked out a few, in finger quotes, of my favorites for you. Each slide that follows here provides important information for plant selection, like their blooming time, sun exposure, soil moisture, and the plant height. You'll get to see the colors from the pictures. All of these species are suitable for full sun and medium moisture soils. I didn't include any wetland or woodland plants or grasses. Maybe those are for future presentations. Even so, this list is still long, so we better get going. We're going to start with prairie plants that flower in late spring to early summer and then continue through the seasons to the first frost of fall. Wild geranium provides early color in the prairie garden and is visited by early emerging wild bees. This is a highly adaptable plant that doesn't get too tall. It has an interesting way of moving its seeds. Each one is attached to its own mini catapult. You can see those in that picture in the bottom left. If you don't want to have wild geranium coming up all over your garden, I recommend trimming off the seed heads before they burst. The cheery yellow of golden alexanders is a welcome sign of spring in the prairie garden, accented here by a single purple spiderwort flower. This species is related to garden plants like dill, parsley, and carrots, and like them plays host to black swallowtail caterpillars. Other butterflies, bees, and beetles also appreciate its pollen and nectar. Golden alexanders, though, is another plant that happily spreads by seeds. The pure white flowers of Canada anemone are perfect reflectors of the early summer sunlight. I think this ebony jewel-winged damselfly was taking advantage of the contrast to show off his colors. Canada anemone can grow in varying light conditions. It spreads underground to fill in around larger plants, but only gets about a foot tall itself. The brilliant blue and purple of spiderwort adds to our spring prairie palette. Each individual flower lasts a day, but the plants keep blooming for several weeks. Little metallic green bees and hoverflies come to dine on the spiderwort pollen, and sometimes you'll find an actual spider, a jumping spider, waiting for those pollinators within the blooms of spiderwort. If you have the space for it, white wild indigo makes a stunning garden plant. The shoots that come up in May look like asparagus at first, but then spread out into a finely branched leafy canopy. The spikes of white pea-like flowers can be over a foot long each and mature into puffy green pods that turn pewter-colored in the fall and rattle when you shake them. Foxglove beard tongue has tubular flowers that are just the right width for the first set of bumblebee workers of the summer to squeeze into. This species tolerates a range of light and moisture conditions in my gardens. Moving into high summer, and the hairy wild petunia, which is no relation to garden petunias, starts to bloom. Saying that it gets 1 foot tall is generous. It makes a nice edging to a rock garden, perennial border, or path. And it's fun to collect seeds of this species. Cut the stalks in late fall and put them in a paper bag to dry. Be sure to close the top of the bag. As the seed pods dry, listen for the pops as the seeds explode out and hit the bag. Butterfly milkweed grabs attention with its eye-popping orange flowers. One odd thing about butterfly milkweed is that it doesn't have the milky sap that gives milkweeds their name. If you want to help monarch butterflies, it's great to plant this and other milkweed species to provide for multiple generations of caterpillars through the summer. Whoops, I just went one too far. Here we go. Pale purple coneflower deserves a little time. It's a cousin of the beefier purple coneflower that's commonly planted in perennial gardens. I think that this true Iowa native is more graceful looking, but it's not delicate either. The dead stems of this species are one place where we've found bee nests, like the ones that Jordan described in his talk. Leaving dead stalks standing over the winter is good for both winter interest in the garden and helping bees. If you're looking for a unique accent plant that lasts for a long time, plant Rattlesnake Master. It flowers for most of the summer, and the mature seed heads are equally beautiful in winter against the snow. This lovely plant goes by more than one name. Bee balm makes sense to me since bumblebees love these flowers, but butterflies like them too. As a typical member of the mint family, bee balm also has scented leaves. It's a fairly tall plant that does well toward the back of a perennial border. Wild quinine is another plant with long-lasting flowers. The seed heads turn the color of tarnished silver and provide fall and winter interest. This one's abundant at the Darrell Smith Prairie in Cedar Falls, it's on the UNI campus actually. And right now it looks just stunning against the snow. With late summer and fall, we enter the UNI Panther Prairie season, dominated by purple and gold flowers. Sweet Black-Eyed Susan is one of those long-lived late summer wildflowers. Meadow Blazing Star is known as the absolute monarch magnet. Migrating monarchs cluster on its purple flower heads, guzzling sugar nectar to fuel their long flight to Mexico. There are several species of goldenrods in our area, and stiff goldenrod is one of my favorites. It has flat-topped flower clusters that are brilliant yellow and visited by butterflies, beetles, and bees. Goldenrods are often blamed for allergies unfairly because they bloom at the same time as ragweed. In late fall and early winter, goldfinches pick apart the fluffy seed heads and eat the seeds. Two of the native aster species that bloom in fall are shown here. They provide important late season nectar for migrating monarchs, as well as new bumblebee queens that need to fatten up for hibernation. Notice that aromatic aster is only about 2 feet tall and would be good at the edge of your prairie border, whereas New England aster is taller and would do well at the back. Showy goldenrod is one of the last prairie species to bloom. It provides an all-you-can-eat pollen and nectar buffet for bumblebees, monarch butterflies, and numerous other important insects. It forms robust clumps and reaches up to 5 feet depending on local conditions, so give it plenty of space and sunshine. If you have a big garden, you could try all of my favorite prairie plants, but even in a small patch, plant a few of the ones that caught your eye. Maybe stick with the purple and gold for your panther colors. You'll be doing something beneficial and beautiful for yourself and your neighborhood. To learn more about the Tallgrass Prairie Center, native seed and plant sources, and native plant gardening, check out these resources. Thanks so much for your attention. If you have questions about native prairie plants for your home garden, please feel free to ask tonight or contact me through the information that Josh is going to share.
All right, thanks so much, Laura. That was fantastic and very beautiful pictures. That's probably my favorite thing about your presentation.
Thanks so much. All of the pictures were from either my work here at the Tallgrass Prairie Center or my backyard or prairie explorations around town. Any questions?
Well, it looks like folks are enjoying it. Again, thank yous and gratitude there. So yeah, go ahead and type those in, any questions you might have.
Wow, I must have answered all the questions through the talk, but yeah. Oh, recommendations for where to find native seeds. Yeah, I would say look for Iowa native seed growers. We have a number of folks across Iowa who produce native seeds, and many of them actually produce Iowa source native plants. A lot of them have websites, and those are also great places to find information about how to grow native plants. One place where I found some smaller native seed growing businesses that I didn't even know about before was by following some prairie sites on Instagram, and so social media can even help you to find those. There is a list of seed and service providers also on the Tallgrass Prairie Center webpage, and that was one of the links that I showed in my talk. But I'd be happy if you give me an email, I can send you a direct link to that. Oh, the book and authors of the book that I recommended, that's Wildflowers of the Tallgrass Prairie. It's by Runkel and Rusa, R-U-N-K-E-L and R-O-O-S-A. It's published by University of Iowa Press. So if you go to their website, I'm sure you'll find it. There's a series of those books. There's one for wetlands and one for woodlands as well. And they're excellent books with beautiful photographs and really interesting information about all the plant species. Seed savers and decora, I do think they have some native plants. It would be interesting to ask them about, where the original seed sources for those plants came from, to see if they were actually sourced from Iowa remnant prairies. That's always a great question to ask your native seed providers to find out if you're getting real Iowa genetics and heritage in your plantings. Best time of year to convert turf to prairie? That's a great question. It takes some time to prepare a site for the prairie plants. Usually that involves killing off the turf. My favorite way is to smother it. That can be done with black plastic or layers of cardboard and other mulch materials, and that takes some time. So you would need to devote at least several weeks to that process, depending on the time of year, and preferably months. Nurseries that provide native plant, yes, you can find native plant nurseries that do provide plants in pots or plugs. I find for home gardening especially, it's great to start with seedlings or plants, because that helps you to identify them so that you don't accidentally weed them out. If you start with seeds, it's helpful when you're getting started to start them in pots yourself, so that you can recognize the seedlings and get them in the places where you want them. What if you can't burn your prairie? You can cut and remove the material. Cedar Falls, for instance, does allow prairie burning under certain situations if you contact the fire department in advance, but you need to double check on that. If you can't burn it, clip it, rake it, take it to the compost facility, or compost it yourself, or use it as mulch in your garden. I've done that before, and I end up with interesting native weeds. Recommendations for shady woodlands area might be a really great topic for another time, but two of the species that I showed tonight, the Canada anemone and the wild geranium, also do well in part to even full shade. I think I